Good afternoon, everybody. You know, the Pentecost Vigil tonight feels just a little bit different than most masses that we have during the year. Because we didn't hear just the normal two readings in the gospel reading. Tonight, the church actually kind of slows down a little bit and walks us through salvation history. We heard about wind, fire. We heard about mountains shaking, dry bones rising, and God promising to pour out his Spirit upon the world. I mean, honestly, if somebody were to wander into the church tonight without any context, they'd probably look at us and go, you know, those Catholics celebrate Pentecost with some dramatic reading marathon and weather emergencies. But every reading tonight points to one truth. And that truth is that God is always preparing his people for the coming of the Holy Spirit. We heard in Genesis, they talked about the Tower of Babel. Humanity tried to reach heaven on its own terms. Pride took over. Everybody speaks, but nobody understands one another. Communication collapsed. Unity collapsed. And if we're honest, doesn't that kind of sound like a modern problem right now? We're living in a world where people argue constantly, post angry comments instantly, and somehow we have thousands of ways to communicate, but we understand each other less and less. But Pentecost, it reverses what we heard at Babel. At Babel, language divided humanity. But at Pentecost, the Holy Spirit unites humanity. The miracle wasn't only that the apostles spoke different languages, the miracle is that people understood them. The Holy Spirit makes truth understandable through love. And that might be one of the greatest miracles that our world needs today. Because you know what nobody's ever said? Nobody has ever said, you know what would help this situation? A little bit more yelling and a few more insults. The world doesn't need louder Christians. We need understandable Christians. Christians that speak the truth, mercy, kindness, and hope. And then we heard from Exodus, God descends upon Mount Sinai in fire, smoke, thunder, and power. The mountain trembled before the presence of God. And we realized something incredible. At Sinai, God wrote his law on stone tablets, but at Pentecost, God writes his law upon our hearts. Pentecost is about transformation. And we heard Ezekiel, and he gives us that unforgettable image of dry bones, right? Bones scattered everywhere, lifeless, hopeless, abandoned. And God asks the question, he says, can these bones live again? And at first glance, of course, the answer is, well, no. But then the Spirit of God breathes life into what looked dead. That's Pentecost. The Holy Spirit specializes in bringing life back into things that we thought were finished. I don't want you to look at the dry bones in the literal term of dry bones. Dry bones might be a marriage going through difficulty, family issues, or our faith. Heck, hope might become dry bones. Some people come to church, maybe even tonight, spiritually exhausted, feeling like life has just drained them. Stress, grief, anxiety, disappointment, the sins that we carry, the loneliness. Some people feel like their spiritual batteries are just dead, maybe since, February, just tired. And into that exhaustion, the Holy Spirit comes to you and says, I am not done with you yet. That's why the prophet Joel says, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. He didn't say just the saints. He didn't say just the priests. He didn't say just people who seem spiritually perfect. He said all flesh. And that's really good news, folks, because most of us, I don't think any of us, floated into this church 3 feet above the ground in mystical holiness. Right? Many of us are just trying not to lose our patience in traffic. And yet God says, you'll do. This is the story of Pentecost. The apostles were not impressive by worldly standards. They just weren't. Before Pentecost, what were they doing? They were hiding behind locked doors in fear. Peter denied Jesus. Thomas doubted. The others, they ran away. And yet the Holy Spirit came upon them, and suddenly, fearful fishermen became courageous evangelists. Same people, different spirit. And that should encourage each and every one of us. Because sometimes we think holiness is reserved for extraordinary people. People who always seem calm, always seem joyful, prayerful, who always seem organized. Meanwhile, some of us are proud just to make it through a week without saying something regrettable before our second cup of coffee in the morning. Pentecost reminds us that God isn't waiting for perfect people. He works through available people. And in the gospel tonight, Jesus stands and cries out, let anyone who thirsts come to me and drink. Deep down, each and every one of us is thirsting for something, whether it be peace, purpose, maybe some healing, hope. Maybe we're thirsting for forgiveness or love. And Jesus tells us that answer to that isn't found in money or popularity or endless distraction. The answer is in the Holy Spirit. St. Paul said creation itself is groaning for redemption. And honestly, you can hear that groaning in the world today. People are searching everywhere for meaning, but they're often looking in the wrong places. Pentecost is here to remind us that the Holy Spirit has not retired. The Spirit still moves within us today. The Spirit is in every confession. Spirit's in every Eucharist, in every act of mercy. Every time someone chooses forgiveness over resentment or chooses hope instead of despair, the Spirit is there. We need to let that Holy Spirit enter into our hearts and open them in ways that maybe we've been a little bit resistive to. We need to remember that one person filled with the Holy Spirit can make a difference. I mean, the apostles proved that. And if God can work through them, he can work through us all.